Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming out tonight. My name's Christina, and I'm the events coordinator here at Books Are Magic. Before we get started, I wanted to point out some logistics for how tonight's going to go. We'll be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the event, so start thinking of questions to ask now. After the talk tonight, GennaRose will be signing and personalizing books at the desk near where you checked in. We also have additional books available to purchase from my colleagues at the register. If you're joining us virtually on the live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart online using the link in the live stream description. It's my pleasure to be here tonight with GennaRose Nethercott and Anna Kaufman to celebrate the release of 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart. These lush, strange, beautifully written stories explore a human longing in all its diamond dark facets to create a collection that will redefine what you see as a beast and make you beg to have your heart broken. GennaRose Nethercott is the author of a novel, Thistlefoot, and a book-length poem, The Lumberjack's Dove, which was selected as a winner of the National Poetry Series. She tours nationally and internationally performing strange tales, sometimes with puppets in tow, and helps create the podcast Lore. She lives in the woodlands of Vermont beside an old cemetery. GennaRose will be joined in conversation tonight by Anna Kaufman. Anna Kaufman worked as an independent bookseller and book buyer before joining Vintage/Anchor in 2017, and she brings her frontline perspective of customers' wants and needs to her work as an editor at Pantheon. She remains at her core a big old nerd and will happily trade D&D tips. Let's all give a very warm welcome to GennaRose and Anna.
Hello, everybody. Wow, a whole full house. This is awesome. Thank you all so much for coming out. I'm GennaRose.
I'm Anna Kaufman. Hello.
Hello. Hello. I'm so stoked to be here at Books Are Magic. I've been wanting to do a reading here forever. We tried to get a reading here for Thistlefoot, and we asked too late. And they're such a hot commodity that we weren't able to squirrel it. And so this time we were like, we got to get there right away before they fill up. And it worked. So hello. I'm also just so stoked to be in conversation with Anna. We've never been in conversation in front of a crowd before, only in secret spaces behind closed doors. Anna and I have been working together as editor and author since Thistlefoot was just an incomplete manuscript.
An egg.
A wee egg. Good one, dude. And we have had the wildly lucky kind of fluke experience of not only being collaborators, but also becoming very close friends, which is such a joy to me because it means that making books has become the feeling of just like making art with my friend. And it's really nice. So I'm so stoked, that you're here to chat with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me up on stage with you.
Anytime. Yeah. Making you join me on stage. Also, you may notice that we're joined here by a couple other companions. These creatures, I call this one Jonathan, and I call that one Horace. Right? Yeah, it seems right. For sure. No question. These are hand painted, like acrylic paint on canvas. Yeah, like a human hand did that. These are by my friend Sophia DeMatteo, who has graciously rented their beasts to me for my tour. So they'll be traveling with me down the East Coast this week. So I'm just going to start with a short reading from my new book that came out 3 days ago. Yeah. 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart. It is a collection of short stories, and it really represents over a decade of my work in short fiction. The most recent of the stories in this collection I wrote a little over a year ago, last January, and the oldest of the stories in this collection I wrote about 12 years ago. I was just telling Anna this, but the oldest story is called Foxjaw, and I wrote it about this, like, for lack of a better word, sort of fuckboy that I was dating when I was 22, 21 years old. And I characterized him not very favorably in that story as a fox. And as soon as I showed him this story back then, 12 years ago, he got a huge tattoo of a fox on his shoulder. And then he came to my book launch 2 days ago and he had me sign it. So suffice to say, I'm really psyched because this just, like, it's very many different versions of me that are in this book, and I'm really stoked to enter it into the world. I'm just going to read for about 5 minutes, a little popcorn style. The titular story in the collection, 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart, is in the form of a bestiary. There are 14 stories total, but that center story, there's 50 different invented creatures. And they're all fully illustrated as well, which is really fun. Created by my friend Bobby Detrani, who actually, if you have read Thistlefoot, the black school bus that the Duskbreaker band travels in is just Bobby's bus that I stole with my brain and then gave it to fake people. And how many of you are familiar with the form of a bestiary or a bestiary? About half, yeah. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, or for those of you who just said you were familiar to look cool but don't actually know, in the Latin sort of medieval monk culture, there was this encyclopedic form called a bestiary, which were essentially, compendiums of all the known creatures with illustrations and with sort of allegorical content. And what was great about these was the monks hadn't seen most of these animals, so they were making some bold assumptions. My favorite one is they thought that goats were just so sexy that their blood could melt diamonds.
That's true, though.
You tested that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
At
that
least
was
the sexiness part. I agree with that.
Everyone agrees that goats are really sexy, and we're not going to get into it, but there is definitely evidence of that in this book. There's definitely sexy goat content hiding in between these pages. I don't make the rules. My dad had me read James Dickey's poem The Sheep Child when I was like 7, and that really left a permanent. Anyway, so my other favorite of the bestiaries of the beasts from the Latin bestiary are they thought that hedgehogs had spikes so that they could roll in a pile of grapes, and a grape would stick to each spike, and then they could like go home, and then their babies could eat off all the grapes. So every illustration of a hedgehog from that time period is just a hedgehog just covered in grapes. So suffice to say, I became obsessed with this form, and I decided to create a bestiary of my own. And so I created 50 weird little guys from my imagination, and I'm going to just share a couple of those little abominations with you here today, if I have hands that can do that sort of thing. I got it. Okay. Do I got it? Yes. Okay. If you do have a book in your hand and you want to follow along like we're in class, by which I mean you want to look at the illustration while I read it, we're on page 117. This is called the Yislani. When a fruit-bearing tree is planted on a grave, a litter of Yislani will grow during the following drought season. In their fetal stages, they resemble plums or dark peaches swelling on the bough. When they grow heavy enough, they drop into the underbrush and uncurl. It will take 5 days for their eyesight to develop, and until then, the Yislani will blindly claw at the soil in search of water. If one digs deep enough to uncover a body, that Yislani will be shunned from the pack. It will sit alone by the foot of the tree, begging for water in a voice that sounds all too much like the voice of the person buried beneath it. Do not give this Yislani water. We repeat, do not give this Yislani water. Walk away. Pretend you do not hear. Yoon. This is 148. Yoons were human once. They nursed babies and baked bread and made love beneath the shade of the willow trees. Then they were drowned in the bog on the edge of town. The marshlands kept them flawless, their skin tanned tight as a drum skin, sealing their spirits inside like caged dogs. Snarling against their enclosure, the ghosts grew frantic, then foolish, then sick. By the time the bodies rose out of the silt, the ghosts had been trapped too long. They had become something new. There's an urban legend about a Yoon that snuck into a high school party. Some kids were playing spin the bottle in the root cellar, and the Yoon joined in. First, Jackie spun and had to kiss Ryan. Then Ryan kissed Dale. Then Dale kissed Nadia. Then Nadia kissed the Yoon. And when she did, the Yoon's ghost slipped through its parted lips and into Nadia's mouth. It slithered down her windpipe and into her lungs, where it made a new home beside Nadia's own ghost. There aren't many girls with two ghosts in one body. She became quite the local celebrity. Talk shows brought her on to hear her bicker with herself in dead languages she had never been taught. Then they would hand her a small porcelain dish, into which she would cough up a mouthful of mud. And I think I'm just going to read one more so that we can dive into our little chat.
Leave them wanting more.
Leave them wanting more. That's what. Are you telling me to stop right now?
No.
You're like, that's enough. Yeah. Let's see here. The Blue-Bellied Ib, which is on 160. Ever since Ibs figured out how to use the phone, it's been prank calls day and night. They're terrible jokesters because blue-bellied Ibs cannot lie. Instead, they'll ring you to tell it to you straight. The recycling is all going to the landfill. If you'd kept practicing the fiddle, you'd be good by now instead of dreadful. That comb-over isn't fooling anyone. One day, you too will die. Remember how you lay together in the back of the flower shop, the air drowned in gardenia. He'll never hold you again. You could have loved her. You simply chose not to. They're purebred soothsayers. It's okay to hate that. It's okay to shoot the messenger. Rotisserie Ib is a good filling meal, and if you eat it, you won't have to listen to the truth anymore, ever again. Easy. Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
The perfect portion. Okay. I have some questions for you.
Great. And I also have some questions for you, so
All right, we're going to throw
watch
back and
out,
forth.
bub.
The first thing I want to know is, what's the first book that you remember, like, lighting your brain on fire? And what's the most recent?
Oh, those are good. Okay. The most recent is I just read Piranesi, like, last week. And, yeah, that was good. If you haven't read that, perfect little book.
I literally just finished rereading it today.
Yeah, it's so good. Sorry. This microphone. Yeah, that was... It felt very singular, which I loved. I don't want to spoil anything. I went into it knowing nothing about it, and I think that's the best way, so I don't want to say anything about it, but it was just a wonderful, short, tight, elegant novel. And then the first book that really lit my brain on fire. I can't really remember as a child which ones. I had a book as a kid that was called When the Sun Rose, and it was a little picture book, and it was a girl befriended the sun, who was another girl who was wearing like a glowing gown of yellow roses, and she had a lion as her familiar, and they fed the lion a bowl of blueberries and cream. And that really did it for me.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. But I will say the first book I remember, like, completely rewiring, or the book that completely rewired my brain more than any other book was the first time I read Kelly Link, who's my hero. And she, the first book I read of hers was Stranger Things Happen. And it was the first time I had read a book where I felt like I was reading the inside of my own brain. And there was no suspension of disbelief necessary. There was no active translation necessary in order to like reach the emotions she was trying to elicit. It was just like, yeah, it was more than just looking in a mirror. It was like going into myself. And that really freaked me out. Completely changed the way that I think and write forever.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, well, I should ask you a question.
We're going to trade.
Because I feel like it's really exciting to have the opportunity to hear from an editor of a project and the author of the project together. Because I mean, books are such collaborative pieces. And I think we forget that because they are marketed so much as this is an author's creation. But like, we worked on it together.
Well, that's a very generous interpretation. Thank you.
Well, anyway,
all the good parts are hers, and anything anyone ever doesn't like is my fault.
Well, okay. So Otis actually gave me the idea for this question, so credit where it's due. But so being an editor is much more than just the act of editing a text, right? Namely, you are a tastemaker. You are someone who you get to choose what books in many ways you want to work with and what books you don't, which, like, for lack of a better word, makes you one of the gatekeepers.
Oh, no.
And I know, which is...
Am I getting canceled right now?
Yeah, everyone, Anna Kaufman is canceled.
Oh, bye.
Bye, yeah. No, so I think it's a really interesting role to inhabit, and it makes me wonder, like, how do you grapple with this position of being someone who gets to essentially decide what sort of stories the public is able to read and what sort of stories that they may not read? Like, what goes into the decisions that you make when you select a book for publication?
Yeah. I mean, I think if anything, I kind of like have turned it around in my own head, whether that's right or not. And I think about it instead of being like a gatekeeper keeping it out, I can let certain things that I really like in for them and get them brought out to the world where they might not otherwise get to be. So I kind of try to think of it that way, that like a limited number of stories and authors and voices that I can champion, and I just want to try to bring out the ones that I feel really, really passionate about and feel like they could make a difference in the world, whether by, you know, lighting someone else's brain on fire, like Kelly Link, or just telling a really important and resonant story. So yeah, I think I try to think about it as like, I often feel like I don't have a lot of power, although I guess you're right, technically there's some. And yeah, it's just to try to use the with great power comes great responsibility.
Wow, did you write that yourself? Did you
yeah,
make that up?
That's a me original. Write that down.
Wow. Thanks,
but
Unc.
but you know, just try to use that power for good.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up second half of this question?
Of course.
Which is, you know, given the fact that in this editorial role, yes, you're doing all these different things, right? You're editing literally the text. You're also selecting text as well as a million other things. What do you think of as the most vital role of the editor?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think to an extent it is just like that, the championing, you become like the guide for, you know, you are picking these things, but then you need to take the book all the way through the process and hopefully be like a little torchbearer for it, because you're just trying to tell everyone that they have to pay attention to this book, that not only we're publishing it, but like you want to pay attention. You're selling everyone else that you work with at the imprint on this book and this author, and you're selling all the salespeople on it, and you're trying to be like, we got to put the greatest cover in the world on this book, so
which
that people
you
want to pick it
guys
up.
did for this.
We nailed
like,
it on
how
this
gorgeous
one.
is that?
We nailed on this one. So yeah, I think just like trying to, in every way, make every publication the best, you know, make every book the best version of itself. And hopefully, I mean, the most fun part is actually working with the text. And if I could do nothing else, it would be mostly that. But then also you got to get the
always
trenches
the
and fight.
Emails.
Always with the emails, yeah.
But, well, I'm super
Every day I get
stoked that
emails.
you chose my books. Thank you.
I'm super stoked. Best decision I ever made. Oh wait, I have to actually.
You have to ask me a question now, dude. This is how
I
this
can't
works.
just stare off into space in happy
Nice
nostalgia.
try.
Okay, this is a totally weird question. So there's some bad behavior in this book. Some little, you know, some acts of revenge, some world ending, etc. If there was, what's the one crime you would commit if you absolutely knew you were right with it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I fully have the answer to that. I think it's really important for every person on this earth to know what they would heist if given the opportunity. I also very strongly believe that if you are smart enough to write a heist novel, you are smart enough to plan a real heist, and you are wasting your talents. So
Steal an actual diamond.
Yeah,
God.
come on, like. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I would commit a heist, and I know exactly, of course, what I would heist, which is so in in 2000 they were excavating the Titanic wreck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know about this. My new hyperfixation. So they were excavating the Titanic, and they found this like little leather parcel. And when they opened it up, the laboratory was just flooded with the scent of like a gardenia and lilac. And what they realized is that they had unearthed an intact case of perfume vials from the bottom of the Titanic wreck. It turned out there was a perfumer who was on his way to America with plans to open a new perfumery shop. He was traveling with his samples in tow. He managed to escape and survive the wreck, but he left his samples behind, and they went down with the ship. Today, there is an exhibit of all the stuff they took out of the Titanic sitting in the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas. That is the one shaped like a big old pyramid, in case you've never been there. Yeah, you can just wander through. It includes what they call the big piece, which is the largest piece of the Titanic that's ever been dredged up. It's just like in there, in this pyramid. And they also have this perfume. And so I would heist that perfume. They also have a full bottle of champagne that's never been opened that was also taken off from the floor of the Titanic. And I just want a whittle sip.
Just a little.
Yeah. I just want to get like a little cursed. It's like as a treat, you know? So yeah, my crime would be a Titanic artifact perfume and champagne heist from Las Vegas Casino Hotel, which I think, given that Ocean's 11 is about heisting from Las Vegas casinos,
Yeah.
like I just follow that blueprint and I'm gold.
I think it'll be great. I'm willing to join up. GennaRose is 11.
What would your role be? This is my other favorite question is like,
No.
which is twofold, where it's like, what is based on the actual skills you have that you would be in a heist, and what is like if you could have any regardless of your actual talents?
Yeah, I have no actual talents related to heisting, so I don't know. I think the best thing I could maybe do is like some sort of distraction. I'm very good.
Do it. Let's see what you got.
No. I'd have to stand up off the stool, because I think what I would do is find a very dramatic way to like fall down and fake an injury.
Wow.
Because I'm very clumsy and I smash into things all the time anyway, and everyone would be like, yeah, that does seem like something she would do. So, but then I just make a real big fuss. And
Yeah, you're like one of those people who deliberately like slip on a wet floor and then sue.
Yeah, but for a much better goal of heisting
A
stuff
perfume heist, yeah.
off the Titanic. Yeah.
Cool. Great. I would, if I could choose and it didn't have to do with my actual skills, I would be demolitions.
Oh, that would be so fun.
Kind of like in that. You know the Journey to Atlantis cartoon movie. There's like the guy with the little glasses, and he's like, and he's like digging holes.
Yeah.
That's me.
I'd like to do some super hacking. I don't know how to do that.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know
like
how
Aquafina in Ocean's 13
Yeah.
or
I'm
whatever.
I'm hacking into the Luxor's computer systems.
Done.
Opening doors. I get to sit the entire heist like literally on my butt and just like have a little drink. It's great.
I mean, I think we should probably go into business.
I'm ready.
I mean, we're already in business.
Burn this live stream.
Yeah, we were never here. Is it my turn?
It is.
Well then, okay. Okay. Would kiss, marry, kill.
Uh-oh.
3 of the beasts. Okay, we're gonna choose. I'll do 3 of the ones I read today, so that
Okay.
so that they're all on board. The Yoon.
Right.
Which again was the bog body that played Spin the Bottle. The Yislani, which is the one that drops off a bow and then digs for water in a human grave. And the third one, what was the third one I read?
The third one was the Ib.
Oh, the blueberry-bellied Ib who's yelling. Oh, that's too easy of a kill.
Well, not necessarily.
All right, okay. The
I mean,
blue-bellied Ib.
you can come up with 3 other ones.
Sexy goat.
Oh, well.
That's too easy. That's too easy. Of course you would kiss the sexy goat. The Sorbus, which is this guy right here.
What does he do? I forget.
The Sorbus, he stands at a crossroads and he offers you a deal. If you look into his blue eye, he'll give you killer guitar chops or a booming dentistry career, but like at a terrible cost.
Oh, man. I mean, all of these guys are catches is the problem, I think, right? Like, who would you not want to marry among this group? I mean...
That actually is no from my collection. Sophia just made that. I saw that on the wall of their studio and I was like, can you make me some more? That was like literally an independent project they were working on that just so happened to be perfectly compatible with what I was also doing.
Unless it's the unknown beast and it's finally taken form.
There's one beast in the collection that's like, it has a blank and no one speaks its name. And maybe, whoa.
Mind
Anyway,
blown. I'm just getting out of
the question.
I'm evading the question.
Yeah.
I mean, probably, obviously the Yoon is good at kissing, and I could outdo with some company sometimes. So like, sure. Maybe marry this deal making guy.
A provider.
Because exactly. Like, and like if there's a cost, but like you've just decided that like you're roped to him now, so he's like, oh, it's my fate's tied. So. And then I don't really want to kill any of them. They're lovely.
You have to.
Is it the Ib or is it?
Yeah, it's the Ib, which is the easy one to kill because that's the one that's telling you the truth you don't want to hear.
I mean, I guess I could marry the Ib and then just like be for once in my life like real with myself.
I mean, that's a very mature choice.
Thank you. I feel mature right now talking about this.
You look it. Just kidding. You look great. You look hot as hell. Look at this outfit.
Do you
guys like our outfits? We coordinated them.
I love a themed outfit opportunity.
Yeah, so my whole theme this tour is like Cursed Valentine. Speaking of which, we made Valentines with the beasts on them and they're free and you should grab some off the counter before you go. There's 7 different varieties and they're all absolutely demented, so... I spent a lot of time on Canva putting them together, so please appreciate me.
I'm going to ask you my beast-related question,
Okay.
because I had one too, which was based off an internet classic. Would you rather fight 1 Gatly-sized squirm or 100 squirm-sized Gatlys? Or you can pick 2 other beasts of your choice.
Whoa, okay, wait. A Gatly-sized squirm... Wait, and the Gatly is how big again?
It was a big one. It's the one with the big scary face, the big green face.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that's the one that Bobby was like, don't worry, I made a funny one.
Yeah,
and it was the most terrifying one in the entire collection. Yeah, very upsetting. It has a real, like, Attack on Titan energy to its face.
It does. It is. It looks exactly like one
but
of those.
less anti-Semitic.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I always hope to be less anti-Semitic.
Then, yeah, I mean, and if your baseline is Attack on Titan, so anyway,
that's a whole other conversation.
Sorry, yep.
And I think it definitely would want to fight off a 1 Gatly-sized squirm because all the squirm does is scream and scream when you're sad.
Yeah, I know. But imagine that at like.
Yeah, that's okay compared to 100 of those little fuckers.
Yeah.
Did you see their mouths? I'll tell you guys what page they're on so you can see how upsetting.
Down the page numbers. Didn't cite my sources here.
What was it? 108 and 126. 108 and 126. Thank you, Amanda. Okay. Let me ask you a question. While they're debating experience, yeah, they're really, really upsetting, aren't they? I swear to God, the Gatly is the one Bob was like, he had drawn a bunch of really frightening ones, and then he was like, oh, don't worry, I drew a fun, silly one.
He's fine, though.
Yeah, he's so fine. Okay. I'm asking you this seriously, so you can't be like polite about it, and just know that I'm chill. Okay.
I'm terrified. Okay.
What is the hardest thing about working with me? And we're friends, so it's okay.
God, I don't.
I love constructive criticism. And I love my friends bullying me in front of a crowd.
Okay, I mean, is it I feel like I'm about to say something that would have like ruined my life at a sleepover when I was 14.
Hit me, baby.
Is it this was actually a delight, but is it finding and making sure to edit out lines that you've paraphrased from Buffy?
That is so fair. That is so... The reason I knew that I had been given the perfect editor for me was in the first draft of Thistlefoot, there was a scene that Anna marked with a little note that was like, yeah, this is a little bit too Lover's Walk, but you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, so just ignore me. And I was like, oh no, I plagiarized that straight up from the episode Lover's Walk. Like, thank God I have you to hold me accountable.
But I never felt that was actually the greatest moment as an editor probably in my whole life. The actual worst, now that I think about it, same manuscript, was when I was like, hey, so you have an extended metaphor about nodding, and you can't do that.
I did it anyway, though. I left one in for you.
We left one in for just
I'm sorry I'm not terminally online like some people here.
I'm also fine.
Yeah. Okay, those are good answers.
All right,
yeah.
Thank you. All right, I passed. All right.
Cool, your turn.
Do you have a secret skill that isn't heisting, I guess, and what is it?
Secret skill. Secret. I don't. Everything that comes to my mind is like I do a lot of crafts.
I think that's pretty good.
I don't know if that counts as a secret. Do you know? Do I have a secret skill that you know? Oh, I can say all the presidents. Yeah. So when I was a kid, so my dad can say all the U.S. presidents in order, and he had this rule for me and my brother where he was like, "Okay, you're 18 years old now. You can move out, but you have to, before you move out, be able to recite all the U.S. presidents and make a good quiche." Which fair. I thought were fair life skills, and so I memorized the presidents and I made a quiche so that I could get the hell out of rural Vermont.
I can do one of those two things.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I can name one president.
I can. I can also name one president.
Which one?
Polk.
Yeah, he's the most important.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure to know a really vital one.
Yeah, I would do them for you, but I will admit that like I start getting a little tangled around like Eisenhower.
That would also be. Oh, that's where I could pick it up. I know it from there.
Between the two of us, see, this is such a great metaphor for how we make books.
Between the two of us, we know all the presidents.
Yeah. What? I want to talk about the collection a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's what we just made. Is this book? I know that it was one story in particular that caught your attention in the collection when we first picked it up. But I'm curious at this point, having worked with it now for a few years, do you have a favorite story in the collection or one that you feel most excited for other people to read?
I mean, there were a few I loved right away. I know what you were talking about, which is specifically
Homebody
and the deep trauma that inflicted upon me.
It's all memoirs, friends.
To the point where... To the point where, like, in the years between... I'm so happy it's out now, honestly, because I kept trying to explain that story to people, and they'd be like, oh, can I read that? And I'd be like, no. But now they really can. They can...
To give context for those who haven't read it, a tiny spoiler, it's a story about... essentially, we've all been in relationships in our lives where we've hollowed parts of ourselves out in order to be accommodating for a partner. In this story, that becomes literal, and a woman slowly transforms into a house to accommodate a fairly mid lover.
And it's so much worse than she just described it.
Yeah, it was.
It's so good. I mean, I always loved Eternal Staircase, which is the story that opens the collection.
That's my favorite, I think.
It's really good. And then I always loved Plums, which is the story, Plums at the End of the World, which is the story that ends the collection. And I was like, well, no matter what, I know we have a banging opener, we have a banging closer.
The rest of it's crap.
And many delights in between. I can't remember now. I'm having a brain fart. But the one that I came to like really love, it's a haunted calendar. There's something about that, which is one of your more like poetry adjacent stories, but like the little details of that, as I read it multiple times, just like hit and delighted me over and over.
That's a story that is in the form of, it's not even a story really, it's just a collection of 31 tiny bite-sized ghost stories, one for every day in October. I actually originally wrote it as a series of tweets, and that was back, RIP, when Twitter had the 120 character limit, and so all of them had to be ghost stories that were shorter than 120 characters. And yeah, it was, I love a constraint, and I think it is coming from poetry. There's something really fun about I think there's something about a form constraint that creates a lot of creative impetus and pushes you in directions you might not normally go as a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love it, and they're delightful, and I should make a habit of just reading them every October, and so should everyone else. Okay. While we're talking craft a little bit, and speaking of poetry, what's the difference between writing a poem, writing a story, and writing a novel? How is your approach different? Yeah.
So I think of poems and novels in a way as being opposite. And I think short stories, the way I like to write short stories, it strays closer toward poem. For me, a short story inhabits more of like you're embodying a feeling or a vignette or a sensation in some way. I'm not really interested in short stories that have any kind of like beginning, middle, end narrative arc. Like I want them to feel like you finish a story and it feels like you've woken from a dream and it's already slipping away. For poems and novels, I think that there's a real structural difference in how they function in the brain for a reader, which is therefore changes the job of the writer. By which I mean, this is a very lame analogy, but it's the best way that I've figured out how to explain it, is a poem I think of as being like a zip file. So I know it's really dumb.
No, I'm loving it.
But just bear with me here. So it's like a zip file where it's this great, it's a huge idea or feeling or philosophy or question that you then as the poet have to compress down into this like tiny little bite-sized object that can like literally fit in a pocket. However, the key is for the poem to be successful, it has to be able to expand in the mind back to its full size once again when read. However, a novel, I feel, is just like a file, a regular file, where in a way what you see is what you get, in that the size of the medium matches the size it inhabits in the body and the size you kind of have to experience as the writer as well. Where they both, I think, even though there's vastly different lengths, can capture the same amount of whatever it is you're capturing. But it's, how compressed is it in each given moment?
I really like that.
Thank you.
I believe we're meant to now take questions from the audience, unless you have one last thing you want to stick it to me with.
I don't think I had, no.
Okay, good. Then I escape. I escape.
I can come up with something really mean.
No, we're good. So questions from the audience. Yes, right there.
Hi. 2 questions. One, speaking of heists, have you seen the show Leverage?
No.
Then you're welcome. You can do
Thank you.
Which beast would you, I don't know, give a sword? And why?
Okay, I'm just supposed to repeat this for the audience
Okay.
at home. Which beast would GennaRose give a sword to?
Wow. Dangerous content. Okay, who we got? I would probably give a sword to the keel. The keel, I'll read you that really quick. Where is that little guy? The keel basically is a little kind of rabbit-like creature. I won't read it, I'll just describe it. Who avoids being eaten by predators by going up to them in the night and whispering sweet nothings into their ears. And I just feel like the keel would be the one out of all the beasts least likely to use a sword for evil and more likely to use it in self-defense. So, yeah.
Okay. I saw you before. Right there.
Having read Thistlefoot and having heard about them tonight, what is it about like creatures, like non-human, that's sort of a literary device like that appeals to you? And like why is it like that kind of a recurring theme of yours?
Why are creatures a appealing theme and reoccurring theme for you?
Great question. So in addition to being a writer, I'm also a folklorist and a folklore ethnologist. And in folklore and supernatural folklore from around the world specifically, you encounter a lot of stories about creatures, beasts, monsters, what have you, these sort of alternately human or inhuman beings. And most often they exist to represent something very human, but in a way that becomes unrecognizable enough that people can discuss them without feeling like it's too close to home. And this is always my favorite kind of story and my favorite kind of folklore is the kind of tale that is actually a way for a community to talk about either something too painful or too taboo to look at directly. And so instead would rather invent this metaphorical parallel for that thing in order to address it. And often they will take the form of something that looks as inhuman as possible to keep it away from themselves. For example, one of my favorite creatures in folklore is the Kelpie, which is this Scottish water horse. And the way that these Kelpie stories work is Kelpies take the form of a very, very sexy horse that wanders along the seashore and offers itself to young maidens to go for a ride. And if a maiden rides the pretty horsey, they will fuse to its skin, be dragged into the ocean, and have their liver, heart, and lungs spit back on the shore before the rest of their body is devoured.
Good
Yum. So, it's pretty clear that this was a sexual allegory that parents would tell their daughters, too uncomfortable to tell them not to sleep around. Instead, they would say, oh, no, don't ride the pretty horses, girls. And that I just find really fascinating, that as humans, that we are so unwilling to be honest with ourselves that we would rather invent the impossible. And I think that's why I'm drawn time and time again to these monstrosities. These creatures and the idea of a monstrosity being this kind of, and this is addressed a little in one of the stories, but containing a contradiction within itself in some way.
Yeah. Okay, in the back, yes.
What was your process for naming the beasts?
What was the process for naming the beasts? I feel like Sigourney Weaver in Galaxy Quest.
Wow, great movie, by the way.
Real good.
Love Galaxy Quest. Someone asked me this the other night, and I honestly have no idea. The way I wrote the beasts is I wrote these about 8 years ago, that particular story, and I would go to a cafe down the road from my apartment in Boston where I was living at the time. I'd sit down, and my goal was just I would create 3 new beasts each morning. And I had no idea who they were going to be or what their whole deal was. I would just sit down and see who arrived. And so I think the titles for the beasts were similar, where it was just like whatever word appeared in my head, that is what the beast was called. And it was interesting because when it came to the copy editing portion of this, I actually realized I should probably go on Google Translate and make sure none of these are words that mean something in another language. Miraculously, I think I did okay. I didn't have to change any of the beasts' names. Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of just like a sit down and see what shows up on the page kind of process.
Yeah.
So building on the question about Thistlefoot and the non-human, more than human realm, I have a similar question about the world of history. In Thistlefoot, this was quite obvious, the Baba Yaga house, into you just working across this book, and I'm wondering if how you're seeing what you're seeing the role of history in the text or in the stories, or if it has a kind of similar or different presence.
How did your own history shape this collection?
I think everything that I write in some way, in the same way that I'm interested in creatures because of what they say about people, I'm interested in strange stories because of the true stories that they tell. So anything that I write, as fantastical as it may seem, is rooted in something real on Earth. And whether that's me exploring, an actual point of tension in my own history, or whether it's delving into world history in some way, that appears in both of those forms in this book. Most of the stories in this collection, the one thread that really runs through all of them is every one of the stories is about a different facet of human longing. And so many of these are more personal sort of explorations of different types of attachment that I was grappling with through the years that I was writing them. But that said, there's a story in there that is inspired by, when I became obsessed with World War I facts. And so is drawn from World War I history. And there are parts that are exploring histories of different places that I've lived or different people that I've known. But I do think that everything I write, even though they seem like fantasies, I'm only interested in fantasy so far as it says something about the actual world.
In green.
What is your favorite Kelly Lake story?
Ooh.
What is your favorite Kelly Lake story?
That is so hard. That is so hard. There's so many good ones. One more question. Okay. I love so many of them. I really love the story Magic for Beginners. There's this, for one, it's about being a Buffy fan, which is just very obviously near and dear to my heart, but it also encapsulates this whole like logic. It's a story that does feel like a dream you've woken from, in a really exquisite way. But I also really love the Fairy Handbag, which is in that same collection, I'm pretty sure. And she has a really amazing ghost story that I'm obsessed with, The Wrong Grave, where I think it's a perfect ghost story about based on when Rossetti buried. Do you know about this? Rossetti buried some poems with a girlfriend and then realized they were really good poems and wanted them back and dug her up to get them out. And so, yeah, Link wrote a story kind of inspired by that about a boy who goes to dig up these poems he buried with a girl, and then there's a girl's ghost sitting in that grave. But it's not his girlfriend's ghost. And it's, yeah. I can't choose just one.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
How would you fare as an employee of the Eternal Staircase?
How would you fare as an employee of the Eternal Staircase?
I feel like I am an employee of the Eternal Staircase.
Aren't we all employees of the Eternal
Yeah.
Staircase?
I think I do okay as an employee of the Eternal Staircase. It's very much it's a story about this weird roadside attraction of a staircase that just descends forever. And it's in this weird small town where the tourist economy is kind of its whole thing. It's really inspired by the town that I live in, Brattleboro, Vermont, where there's a lot of addiction and there's a lot of kind of get out of this nowhere town mentality, and some people do and other people are swallowed by the town. I've done okay, but that is not the case for a lot of people that I love there. So yeah, I think I do just fine in the Eternal Staircase, but it's still a weird place to live.
And I think that's it. But thank you
Thank
all
you all
so
so much.